Good evening and welcome to Thursday Night Live here on voicelessons.com. You're finding us on our Facebook page, Twitch, YouTube, I think Instagram. We keep expanding. I can't even keep up with it all. But we are excited to have a very important topic to discuss tonight, to talk about. So we've always thought that diversity, equity, inclusion is a really important aspect of everything that we all do. And voicelessons.com is committed to trying to make the world a more inclusive world, to get more teachers access to students so that we have people from the BIPOC community actively involved. And that work requires us not only to invite people from the BIPOC community to talk with them, to learn, but it requires those of us who are white to also come up with solutions and things that we can actively do so that we are not constantly going and expecting others to do the work. In fact, this was just talked about on a podcast I was watching the other day, saying that anytime some of these bad situations happen, it's always up to the BIPOC community to do the work. Mm-hmm. And it's time for some of us, the white people, to step up and do some of the work. And so when I heard about a new workshop that Michelle and Jess have put together, I thought it was a great topic to bring in two people who are connecting with the white community and helping them truly immerse themselves in culture of the BIPOC community as they're studying that music, as they're teaching that music, and along the way giving us lots of great steps that we can take to make ourselves better citizens in this world that we all inhabit together. So welcome, Michelle. Welcome, Jess.
Hello.
No. Back. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Here. So, we'll just jump right in. I know both of you for, very different reasons. And then when I saw that the two of you connected, I was like, oh, well, that's cool. And I found out that it was through, some online conversations, which is it's a great story of how the internet's bringing us together. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I met Michelle because she commented on a post in one of the groups that I run, which is for popular and commercial music voice teachers. And it was specifically around developing different anti-racist practices as white teachers in our studios. And she just mentioned, she said, hey, if anybody's up for this kind of work, let's talk about it. So, so we connected and started talking and had a long initial Zoom conversation just to get to know each other a little bit and kind of see where we wanted to go with things and what our philosophies were. And yeah, Michelle, you have anything to add to that?
No. I mean, other than I think we both were like, we knew each other from afar, kind of. But it was really cool to get on that call and just kind of find your sister from another mister. Wow, we align so much in our story. We align so much in what our core values are. We align so much in the specific work we feel called to do. So let's do it together, because then we can support one another while we're doing it, link arms. And I think that was the most exciting thing for me about meeting Jessica, was just you get off the call with someone and you're like, I found a person. I found a person that isn't my person. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Talk about some of those core values, because I know both of you are very driven for doing everything you can for your student. But what are some of the things that drive you that you found that these were in common?
Yeah, I think we were both very interested in popular music, for instance, as a big part of what we are interested in, and making sure students have the opportunities they need to succeed in those genres. That was a big one. That came up for both of us.
Yeah,
I think also both of us having a very clear understanding that we are in a racial reckoning right now in the United States of America and in the rest of the world, and knowing that because of the relationships that we hold and who we are in our private lives, we needed to make those private parts of us very public so that we were doing our part as advocates and allies for Black, Indigenous, Brown people, especially Black, since both of us have personal lives that involve Black people, my husband, my children, for example. And we knew that it was time. It was time that we filled a very specific gap in the education that is happening in the voice teacher world.
Yeah, because I mean, I think that the big thing, if you haven't thought about this yet, is that the roots of everything we do when we're talking about popular music all comes back to Black culture. And so it's inseparable. We have the music that we have because of the history of Black culture. So you decided to do a workshop. So can you tell us a little bit, like, what was the workshop called, and then why did you decide to do this, or how did it come about?
It was very related to what you were saying at the beginning, in the introduction. It was, okay, we need to do some work. How can we be helpful? And we felt that a way that we could be helpful is to take some labor, take some burden off of our Black colleagues, and do some anti-racist onboarding and pre-work to get people ready for what they will do with Black colleagues further down the road that Michelle and I have no business doing. And we can do some of that beginning stuff to help just get the ball rolling for people when it comes to how to incorporate some practices into their studio, knowing that what we're doing is a very tiny piece of a very, very big thing, which is anti-racism. So that was how the workshop started to come together, was just to do that work, to find a way that we could do our part of that.
Now, I know you mentioned there's resources if you, without us diving into a long talk about what it means to be anti-racist, but can you give like a 1-2 sentence? And you said there were some good resources if this terminology is new to you.
Well, first of all, one of the things that often as white people do is to ask for resources before we look for them ourselves. So one thing I'll recommend is to just go look.
Google it.
Exactly.
Go look, because there's a ton. Now, that said, Michelle and I both have some posts pinned on our studio pages. So Michelle's is Faith Culture Kiss Studio for voice and acting. Mine is Jess Baldwin Voice Studio. So we have some posts pinned at the top where there are some links to resources. But just keeping in mind, sometimes we as white people have this feeling like we get to ask and then we get to have because we asked. And before we do some homework ourselves. And that's one of the pieces of working with our BIPOC colleagues is doing some homework ourselves before we ask for help from them, right? Before we ask for help from anybody. Go see what you can figure out on your own, because a lot of the work has already been done and we just haven't taken the time to read it or look at it.
Yeah.
That's a good point. And if you're looking for a resource, because there is so much to read, but if you look at Scribd, they have a free 30-day trial. And in that free 30-day trial, they have deals with all kinds of publishers for digital copies of the book that you can then check out and read. And there are some really good resources on there. And after the 30 days free, it's only $9.99 a month. So it's economical. It's not like you have to go out and buy tons and tons of books. You can start off and find the ones that you like and then order them and mark them up and make all your notes, etc.
Yeah.
But so what are like some of the end goals, the point of the workshop? Where are you trying to take people from? Where are you trying to get them to? What are some of your outcomes? And how?
Michelle, you want to speak to that?
Oh, sure.
Well, I think part of it, so we may have skipped something because they didn't go in order.
No.
I mean, I think part of this comes with Repertoire Justice as well. But
point of the workshop, I think. Yeah, let's start there.
Yeah. So our goal, our desired outcome is that white voice teachers who have not yet experienced a place where they can deal with their emotional reactions, their confusion, and their questions around repertoire, what's okay, what's not okay, what is the history, that those teachers have a space to do some of the processing that can be extremely damaging to do with our Black colleagues. So the desired outcome that we had was not only that there would be a brave space for people to have these conversations and to kind of sit in their feelings, because you can read books all day long, but if you don't really sit with what you're feeling when you are confronted with certain realities around how you've been behaving in the world and how the world has been behaving toward something that you took for granted, you don't move, you don't change, you don't grow. So the first desired outcome was to create that space. The second desired outcome was to inform on history, inform on context, give and outside of just a book knowledge, but being able to make real connections for people in real time. This is what happened in the 50s. This is what happened in the 60s. This is what happened 400 years ago. This is where the music came from, originally from enslaved peoples. This is where it came from in different African nations, that, right? Like really draw the line so that there's a bigger, more historical understanding of what we're doing here when we get to 2020 and we're like doing hip hop in our voice studios thinking that we can. The third outcome was we wanted to give people some tangible actions that they could do, some measurable actions that they could bring into their voice studio in order to move the needle toward anti-racist belief and behavior and toward creating truly accepting spaces in their white voice studio. And we did that via not only the tangible action items, but then we also have a pledge that everyone takes at the end or can take at the end and then print it out and put it up and have it be a visual reminder of the process that they will take themselves through. We do this with a workbook. We provide a workbook that Jessica put together very, very well. The pledge. So it's this mix of let's have some big feelings. Let's work through those feelings, and then let's have some practical application that we can apply to the internal response once we learn what's been going on.
Oh. So out of that work, what are like some of those things that you said, like to make the voice studio space more inclusive, more accepting? What are some of the things that I guess maybe are blocking that we may not be realizing that we're doing?
That's good. I know, we're like, where do we start? I think it goes back to this. People always want answers. They expect the normalcy that we have built into our culture is that I ask a question, you give me an answer. I am entitled to the answer because I asked the question. And the first thing I think that all of us can do is redefine normal. And really consider, is what happens actually something that I want to continue to participate in? Or is it something that I want to work to change? And that means it's a lot of silence and a lot of thinking before you engage in potential behaviors. Because that's the other thing is we're educators too. So that's part of it. We're learners. Part of it is we want to just tell me what to do, and then I'm going to implement it. And that's not how diversity, inclusion, and equity works. You can't just like get a list of things to do and then implement it and think that magically you're not a bigot or not behaving in racist beliefs or behaviors. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to skirt your question. I'm just trying to hit home that where you start is with educating yourself and sitting in the feelings. And would you want to like go over, Jessica, like some of those questions that you literally ask in the workbook? Because I love some of those questions, like the three areas.
Sure. So we talk about, we begin from a place of, rather than thinking about what music do I want to sing, which is where many people begin because we're like, oh, I like this music. Sounds cool. I'd like to sing it more. And we're challenging people to think instead about what culture would you like to invest in that created that music? Because that's ultimately what that means. Music is not separate from culture. Music is created by culture, exists in culture, happens within culture, is experienced that way. So beginning from that place, rather than, I want to sing these songs. But we've all done it. Of course we want to sing those songs. But when it really comes down to, okay, I'm going to sing these songs. This is going to become part of who I am as a singer and as a teacher. Then we have to say, all right, this is much bigger than just making the right sounds. because there's so much more around it. There's a whole experience of being a human being that's all wrapped around that music. So in order to at least begin the process of learning more about the larger culture in which that music lives, there are 3 kinds of work that we break down some specific steps in, and that's doing homework, and then field work, and then heart work. So homework is the research, the stuff that, honestly, it's an easier place to start, right? Go to the books, go to the websites, go listen to music, go learn some history. And then field work is actually going out into the spaces where the music happens. And being, as a white person, if that space is a place where white people are not as present, being okay with the fact that this may not be your space, right? White people are so often used to being in a space where they feel comfortable, right? And sometimes that's not going to be true, right? Walking into a space with humility and humbleness and
leaving when asked because it's not your place to be in the first place.
Yeah, right. So being willing to go into a space, if that's a place where you can be, and doing a lot of observing and learning and seeing what actually happens in that space. How is the music experienced? How do the musicians interact? How do they interact with the listeners? How do the listeners interact? What's the point of the music? What are other things that happen in that musical experience outside of the music itself? Why are they there? Why is that important? And then in heart work, really examining things like what assumptions had I been making about this music and this culture that I need to question and break down? What assumptions have I, just really challenging your own norms in that heart work, examining the ways that white culture and the culture you just experienced have interacted over time, and what that means for you as a teacher and what you need to be doing in the studio. So we've got more details, but those are kind of the basic breakdowns of those 3 sections of work that we can do to just begin that process. And it was interesting. I found a quote that was about Gershwin. It was written by a Black musician right when Porgy and Bess came out. And he was talking about how Gershwin was being lauded for having gone on location to observe this culture that he was going to write about in Porgy and Bess. And everybody's like, oh, it was wonderful. Look what a great job he did portraying this culture. Meanwhile, the culture itself was saying, that was horrible. That was a terrible portrayal of who we are. And it's not all right. So this musician was talking about that. And it just felt like, man, if that's not a great representation of what this is about. Like, he went, observed. White people were like, oh, great job. You went and observed. But that's only because white people didn't know any better about what that was actually supposed to look like, right? So just going out and doing that field work is just the beginning. It takes a lot of time and a lot of being dedicated to learning about music and culture before you can even begin to really have a handle on what it's about. And initially that can be overwhelming to people. Like, oh my gosh, I have to do that with every music? Yeah. I mean, if you really want to do that style justice, yes, each style deserves to be, right? And that's what repertoire justice is. It is doing the repertoire justice because it deserves to be studied in its wholeness, not just in voice studios and voice studio recitals. And, it deserves to be studied and appreciated in its wholeness, and to know whether white people even need to be in that space doing that music, which you figure out from genre to genre, from situation to situation.
Yeah. It's
good. That's a good word.
I'm gonna say it's like, it's interesting to me has always been is the evolution of our field and our profession and how commercial styles have worked their way in. And it's like it took forever just to get them technically accepted, but now that's been done. And now it's, getting a diverse range of approaches, and that's getting done. And now I think that we're starting to see more and more willingness of people to accept specialists. So I'd also think that like what you're saying about like really immersing yourself in one, culture and style of music, if you're able to, we're now able to specialize in things. So like we literally can do that. And I think that there's a need for it in the world, right? I mean, like we need gospel specialists and these styles instead of us just being the jack of all trades.
Well, I would offer that we already have those specialists. They just might not be at schools.
No,
right?
Yeah, but that's what I mean is like, but there's still not, even when I have students that ask about gospel teachers, there are, but not as much as you see over on like other sides. Like there's people aren't, just like when you go to even some of these sprinklings of things, I feel like we have a whole lot of general voice teachers. There's like 30,000 voice teachers out there in the United States. And you got a lot of generalists, and people haven't necessarily been like, I focus on rock and hard rock. And I'm starting to see some of that pop up. I'm starting to see people who focus on gospel pop up, focus on hip hop and rap, and get more of them, more present, more websites. And it seems like people are able to find, when my students and university are talking about finding a clientele, it seems like with the internet and everything else, they can find a clientele to specialize in one thing instead of feeling that they have to be a jack of all trades.
I would agree with you on that, but I would say, I would ask all of us in the room, how much do we really actually know about the pipeline of a singer becoming a voice teacher in a non-white space? Because let's face it, a white voice teacher is usually started out a white singer in a formal pipeline of classical training and then became a voice teacher and then chose after their classical training to specialize in musical theater, specialize in pop rock jazz. Right. So I feel that the teachers that we see primarily are all kind of in that system. So where are we actually doing the work to find our colleagues that teach gospel in a way that we have not been trained to teach, that teach hip hop in a way that we might see as bad pedagogy, right? Like, I really think there's some deeper issues here around what is a voice teacher and how does a voice teacher manifest itself in white culture versus Black culture versus indigenous culture, mariachi and Mexican and Latinx cultures. There is a different criteria because the purpose of the job is different depending on your cultural background. So I just want to throw that out there. Like, I don't think we're having an argument or anything, but it's just one of those things where it's like, I think it's important that when we stand in this space, we say that, and that's specifically why Jessica and I chose to name this and very much niche this workshop down to the white voice studio, because we don't have any business telling Black people how to teach Black people voice, and I think that there's something that is implied that someone who comes to that voice studio has come through, at least who's ever going to like run into one of us because of our circles and our pipelines and where we show up in the world, that those are the people that we can help because those are the cultures that we walk in, as primarily white, classically driven voice teachers. Now, the good news is we have a bunch of programs that are springing up all over the nation and even the world that are commercial, musical theater, pop, jazz. But if you even look at those programs, some of them are so white centered. There's like no Black people on faculty at very prominent jazz schools, right?
Well, that's because of the doctorate degree hierarchy that they've created. I mean, it's literally, I've done so many searches where we have literally emailed people saying, please let us know if you have any BIPOC, friends who would be interested in this. That's really what we're looking for. And we went through one where my dean called other deans that I told him, I thought maybe we'll find some people who are in a graduate program at this school. Let's go talk. We ended up with one applicant out of 300. Well, after spending days and days. And then what we've come to find out is it's because many people aren't just jumping into grad school without a job in hand, which makes a lot of sense. So it's kind of hard. So the one thing that, we're talking about over in the Music Theater Educators Alliance is creating an internship so that people who are thinking about maybe I would like to do this can then find out how to, what the degrees are, what jungle gym thing that they've placed up for you to try to transverse to become an academic. Because that, going back to those accrediting places who say everyone must have a doctorate, the question's done, unless you can far, far exceed that. And then that's, it's hard. And so when I look at all these universities, the problem is not even really the university not hiring, it's the universities not creating or allowing. Well, when you put that big hoop of must have doctorate, you've now disallowed 98% of the population.
And you just explained systemic racism in academia. Yep. Thank you.
But it's true. And it's a massive problem. And so at Shenandoah about 3 years ago, we had a big discussion and created or changed our doctorate of pedagogy around. So there are no audition requirements other than sing what you sing best. And that took some time, like 7 years.
Yeah.
To that point, because there have been hoops. That's just, NASM says that's not the way you do it. To NASM, if you don't have a bachelor's in music and a master's in music, you can't do a doctorate in music. And my question was, well, what if somebody has a musical theater degree? Come join the program. If you have a jazz degree, come join the program. What if you have a technical audio recording degree because you're a rapper? Come join the program. We'll figure it out. But I think you just got to jump in and be like, I don't care what history was. When they started those degrees, they had no idea what they were doing. They were like, hey, we need to do something, so we'll do it. And I think we need to stop making excuses and just jump in and start a program and then get the feedback as we go along going, oh, yeah, you don't really have much of that. You're right. How can we fix that? But I think that the reason we are where we're at is because people just kick the can and be like, well, we can't fix that one. And instead of just trying to start, they just kick it down the road.
There's a lot of fear, I think, because, and Jessica and I have talked about this, and I would love Jessica to speak to this too, because I know I've been ranty a little bit today, which I'm happy to be on this topic. But it goes to this idea that discomfort is not a feeling that is socially acceptable in the white body. And whenever you go to confront a system that leaves people in a space of otherness, you are going to have to confront very uncomfortable feelings around your personal actions of a culture that you identify with, and actions of the people around you, while at the same time understanding that the system that is built is not a personal attack on you. Yeah. And therefore, because it's not a personal attack on you, you do have personal responsibility to undo the system. Okay. And we have to continue to fail faster, because we are not failing fast enough at this. We are not putting our foots in our mouths nearly quick enough, and then being humble enough to be corrected in order to move the needle on this. Mm-hmm. And so, if you're going to jump in, get as much information as you can first before you just walk in thinking that you're going to save the day, of course. Yeah. But then not you personally, but, on that, but, we do our work, we put it in place. And then when we are called out and called in, we say, yes, I am listening. And we do the work.
Yeah.
And I would also say, the bigger picture, if we zoom out, academia it's a tiny part of music, really. So Michelle and I are both independent teachers. And so part of what we're also talking about is challenging the assumption that you even begin with academia. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's this pipeline way of thinking about what an authority is on learning anything. We're very prone to think we have to go to academia first to learn something, even about something that academia is not the source of. So popular musics academia is not the source of popular musics.
Yeah.
How they're created, how they're taught, how they exist in the world. And so, just the tangled mess, really, of popular musics and academia, trying to figure out how to work together now and finding people who know this music and live in this music to then come to academia to teach it. But academia's, kind of eaten its own tail a bit. And because it excluded people for so long, they're in a mess because, but as teachers, as independent teachers, us not beginning with the question of who in an academic setting can come help me learn this, right? And just going almost beginning with who's not in an academic setting that I need to go learn this from, because this music doesn't exist in an academic pipeline. This music exists very much outside the academic pipeline. And let me go learn from those teachers who are actually doing this music.
But it sounds like, too, what you're saying is learn from your community, like your immediate community, of going out in to listen to the music, where the music's happening.
Right.
In addition, so like truly not looking at any higher authority outside
of the music itself.
Music itself.
Yeah.
I venture to say in most major cities, you aren't going to have to go looking around. Now, if you're in Winchester, Virginia, and you want to sing hip hop and R&B, you're going to have to look for resources in DC. And we have a lot of small towns in America that are that way. But if you're near a big city, you should be able to easily find where music is happening in communities. Wouldn't you say? Yeah.
Good old Google.
And you're right. And I think that's where, though, academia is scared, because they are realizing now that the internet is taking away the only place to house knowledge. And so, it is interesting to see like how, so many other workshops like what you guys are offering, you're bringing it together, you're putting it out there into the world, and it doesn't have to be through academia, and people are able to come in and learn and get a growth experience from it. And I do think that's the wave of the future. That's where we're moving, and it's a positive thing, because it automatically diversifies. Mm-hmm. Everybody has equal access for the most. If you have internet access, you have equal access then to making a free WordPress site or whatever. Mm-hmm. So that's a big step in the direction.
The good news and the bad news about the great democratization of all things.
Yeah. Good. So you're doing another one of these workshops, right? Soon?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. November 22nd is our next one. Sunday, November 22nd. It'll be 10 a.m. Eastern time. So we had several teachers who had to teach classes during the week when we offered our last one, said they wanted something that was more accessible. So we're offering a weekend time. So it'll be 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific, okay? On November 22nd, Sunday.
That's early, 7 a.m.
We had a New Zealander join us last time. What was it?
Wow.
I know, it was middle of the night for them. But, the goal is to make it accessible, and we had people, we also, being independents, we have to fit it into our lives as well. And so usually, both of us usually have some pretty strong boundaries around our weekends. So, here's the real talk. When can I do this and still do my family obligations that I've promised to them on Sunday? At 7 a.m. before everyone wakes up. That's when I can do it.
True. Unfortunately, mine thinks his obligation is to whack me in the head at 7 and say, "I'm awake, Daddy."
Wake up.
Yeah, so that we need to get past that very, very soon. So I'll pop the website up on the screen as well. You can jump over there and to check out and get more information. I think this is a great introduction tonight to some new ways to think. Like you said, we're not going to get anything solved through a single conversation or in a month. You're talking, to me, as we've been talking about things at school, is you're literally shifting the entire culture of the university. Mm-hmm. And you're building it back up because it's old. It needs to be redone. And a culture is ever evolving. So I feel like the more that we all accept that we've got to stop living in the past where things were fixed and start realizing that our world is constantly changing, then going out and experiencing some of the things you're talking about, it seems like it should just become a natural daily occurrence in our lives.
Yeah. can I add an encouragement to that? Just because it's so great what you're saying is, this work, anti-bigotry, anti-racism, this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. It is not one workshop. It is not one voicelessons.com interview. It is not one book. Mm-hmm. It is praxis. It is a daily practice of unlearning great things that we have been taught and immersed in simply because that's the way the world has worked. So there's a great unlearning that has to happen. And if you try to dive into, let me just tell you, as someone who coaches in the diversity, inclusion, and equity sphere, in addition to my business coaching and vocal coaching, if you try to dive in because you feel guilty and anxious and upset, and you just want to fix it, right? Like, I don't want to be that anymore. I need to change. Like, if that's what's driving you and you go deep in, you will burn out. Because you're going to find you are going to heap upon you a weight that is so heavy that you did not know was there. Because this is deep, friends. This is deep. So Jessica and I are just here to hold your hand as you go over the first line of that interview, of that marathon, right? It's the energy of the crowd is there. Oh, my children are home. I got distracted. I was like, oh, fighting the children. Right on that, that they blast off and say, it's time to run. And everyone starts kind of in that huddle of that mass of people, and they all start moving and they move and they move. And that is an energetic part. But if you keep that pace and you try to go all the way through, you're going to drop out of the race and you're going to be what's called a DNF, a did not finish.
I think
in the racing community, this is a thing. I used to be a marathon. Yeah. So it's a DNF. It's a did not finish. And we don't want any person to feel like they didn't have the tools to pace themselves appropriately at the beginning so that they become a DNF in anti-racism and anti-bigotry work.
I think that it's probably also important to remember that there's 400 years of getting to this point. So we're also, you can't, it's a lifelong marathon and it's ever evolving.
Yeah. And we should be clear that our workshop just focuses on American popular music. Like Jessica said, this is the work. This is the workshop. I don't know. I felt like I should say that. So,
yeah, great point.
Thank you.
Any final thoughts?
Jessica.
Thanks for having us. And I'll just say personally, this work is not easy and it is uncomfortable. And, it's also uncomfortable not do it. So the more we can just lean into the discomfort and do it for the sake of people who we love, who deserve to be treated with dignity, including their musics. Yeah. So we'd love to have you join us to be a part of that process as well.
Yeah, you would.
Great. Well, thank you both for being here tonight and for talking about this topic. If you're tuning in, we want to have many, many more discussions about what we can be doing in terms of helping diversity, equity, and inclusion across, all of our work as performers, as teachers, as educators, and out of academia, because out of academia is where the mass majority of people are doing things like both of our guests said tonight. So if you're interested for more information, check what you see down here, their website. Mike, any final thoughts?
No, I would just echo everything everyone said today. And just, in running voicelessons.com, I see so many students that come in and they're not checking that they just want to sing Handel or Mozart or some, which I love. Someone's like, oh, I just thought you did pop music. No, I actually love opera and classical music, and I was trained in that. And I love that music. And that's definitely where my passion and my heart exists. But when I look at what it takes to run an online business, the vast majority of the singers that are out there, They want pop. They want rock. They want hip hop. They want gospel. They want all these other styles. And so we have surveyed our teachers, and we do see this gap existing even with the teachers that are on the platform. So I think that this work you guys are bringing up, this workshop, it couldn't be more relevant. And I think, there's no shortcut. You can either do the work so you can emotionally and technique and style-wise live and embody that music so you can help your students, or you can't. And, we want to support everyone moving in this direction. So thanks, you guys, for your workshop, and thanks for, bringing this topic up, Matt. It's great.
Thanks for giving us space to talk about it.
Yeah, thank you very
absolutely.
much.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in tonight. Jeff, appreciate seeing you stopping by. Thanks, Edry and Shannon. Always great to see friends taking a watch. And we'll see you next week, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Thursday Night Live.
See you guys. Have a good one.